This show really has everything I could ever want. Glamorous women living in a luxury mansion, a really fun and excited, enthusiastic host, dancing. Who doesn't love some dancing? Creative direction, makeovers, and a high stakes performance at the end. Like, sign me up. Hello and welcome back to the Miscellaneous channel where we do miscellaneous things. I'm Zeleny. I typically cover TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things on this channel, so subscribe if that's your vibe. Lizzo has released reality TV perfection. I vaguely knew that Lizzo was working on a TV show, but I had no idea it was coming out so soon, and I had no idea that it would have every element of reality TV I love. So I am gooped and gagged that Lizzo created this type of reality show. It's giving very early America's Next Top Model. It's giving DCC Making the Team, but for the modern era. And it's really tackling a big issue and subject. Later on in the video, I also want to visit sort of the broader idea that the show is trying to convey and examine it from a just general reality TV lens, because I feel like this show is very reflective of our society today compared to previous reality shows that it reminds me of. I'm gonna get a little analytical and deep at the end of the video. As usual, I'm gonna put timestamps down below if you want to skip around to different sections. So the show I'm talking about today is called Watch Out for the Big Grrrls, and it is a reality TV competition show hosted by Lizzo, the pop star. Starting off with my usual question, is it worth watching? And as you can tell by my enthusiasm, it definitely is. I think if you're not into reality TV, then probably not. But if you're into creative reality TV shows like America's Next Top Model, RuPaul's Drag Race, Project Runway, these shows that show a craft, or if you're specifically into dance reality shows, which there's plenty of as well, this show is most similar in format to Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders Making the Team, which is a show that follows the audition process of the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders every single year. And that one's been going since the early 2000s and is still going to this day. However, as you can imagine, that show being in Dallas, Texas, and the Dallas Cowboy cheerleader dancers having a very specific look, very traditional look, to put it that way. Lizzo's Watch Out for the Big Grrrls is a complete antithesis to DCC Making the Team. Instead of having to be a size 0 in Lizzo's Watch Out for the Big Grrrls, it is about plus size dancers. So all of the dancers look kind of like Lizzo, and it's just really cool and interesting to see how like it is still a uniform squad of dancers. They all look like Lizzo, and they're all big girls, and they are able to dance and hit this awesome choreography and do a show for 90 minutes. So I definitely recommend it if that sounds like something interesting to you. The way Lizzo approaches this show from the beginning reminds me so much of Tyra Banks in season 1 of America's Next Top Model. She is trying to expand platforms for women that look like her and spotlight these issues of fat phobia and also a lot of intersectionality, because all of these dancers have very mixed identities, so they don't only experience fat phobia, but racism, homophobia, transphobia. So it's really a show trying to uplift, and it is not a show trying to cause a lot of drama or make bad girls club moments or anything like that. It's just this new era of reality TV where it's more wholesome and not so exploitative of the contestants. Honestly, if you're someone that struggles with body image just in general, I recommend this show. Even if you're not someone into all of these reality shows, it might help you see these women celebrated, and there's a lot of mental health segments that go into this show, especially if you're a woman who has ever struggled with body image. I'm definitely one of those women. There was a lot of watching this that felt like, oh, I felt represented. The capabilities that are usually stigmatized for bigger people to do, these women just doing it. And being able to pull off these dance moves. I mean, same goes for Lizzo. She already is a representation of that, but this show opened it up to a lot of other characters with different backgrounds and other ways of representing people. So it's also good in that sense. Let me talk a little bit about Watch Out for the Big Grrrls and just kind of the format, how it is. Watch Out for the Big Grrrls is an 8-episode long show on Amazon Prime, hosted and created by Lizzo, who is a very successful pop star who really rose to mainstream fame in 2019, has quite a few hits under her belt, and she is preparing for her world tour. The show follows 13 big girl dancers trying to make it onto Lizzo's dance squad for the Bonnaroo Festival. That's the main finish line for the show, like that's what they're working towards the whole time. But after Bonnaroo, Lizzo is going on tour, and they're also competing for a more permanent gig on Lizzo's actual world tour. Lizzo is very hands-on with the women and coming in a lot to mentor them. At the beginning, she has a one-on-one audition session with each one, learns about their backgrounds, and she is really invested in these women's stories and their growth and them making it onto the final performance. This isn't the typical reality show that's structured like someone goes home every week or there's like constant eliminations. It's only in the first episode where Lizzo narrows it down to 10 girls from 13 because she has 10 open spots for her dance team on stage. But once she has the 10 women, she tells them like there's enough spots for everyone and it's up to you if you can keep up, pick up choreography, keep up the right attitude to stay on her squad. So it's interesting. In general, this show is much more wholesome because there's not that cutthroat competition. It's very much about each big girl being in competition with herself and seeing if she can do it and live up to the standards of Lizzo performers. A cool twist that I was not expecting about this show is that the 10 girls lived in a mansion together. That's one of my favorite things on reality TV to happen. It's something that I feel like is more rare nowadays, aside from like dating shows or, you know, shows where the main purpose is to live together. So I enjoyed the nostalgia of a reality TV show that's about an art form, but also they live together and we get to see them develop relationships and build a sisterhood, because Lizzo mentions that it is important to her that the dancers all have a nice sisterhood and get along, because on tour it's basically like living together. I think it's more because it makes for a good reality TV show as well. It's just kind of a double win for everybody. So that is a format. It's not super structured in eliminations, but every episode does have a main theme and challenge that goes with it. Plus, every episode they're learning choreography to different hits of Lizzo so that by the end they're prepared and know the choreography for the whole show. Also, because this is like an A-lister hosted show, the music is really good. They are dancing to actual Lizzo songs. They even have other songs like by Missy Elliott and Cardi B. The music budget is there, and that's exciting because a lot of times reality TV shows starting out have low budgets and just have to use, you know, the stock reality TV music we all now are very familiar with, I feel like. Also, the production value of this show is really great. Lizzo really made it a point to say that she wanted to treat these women very luxuriously, the way she treats herself, and really trying to empower them to do their best. Like, this isn't the type of reality show where Lizzo and the production is trying to sabotage any contestant. They're trying to give them all the resources they can to help them succeed. And she mentions that a few times. She seems to want to provide joy to people and empowerment to people. It was building upon Lizzo's brand and never doing anything that was like unethical or exploitative, which I just find it very interesting. I'll talk more about that later. One thing they did add a little bit of competition between the girls. So every episode when someone does well in the challenge, there's 2 awards someone can win. I loved this element because it brought in Lizzo's brand and her recognizable terms. So there's 2 awards that any contestant can win in an episode. One is the Juice Award, which is for the person with the most like tenacity and passion and heart that week. And then there's the 100% That Bitch Award, which switches to sort of the top of the week, like most well-rounded, like winner of the challenge. They have a little trophy for them. It's really cute, and the whole show was very like just well produced, and that it all fit the brand really well. It all felt like authentically Lizzo, and it gave the contestants something to strive for, because something when you have a show like this that is more wholesome and more positive, you still have to find ways as a reality show to create conflict. Conflicts create stakes, and stakes create us being engaged as the audience. It can be tricky when you have a wholesome media, and even something like this where like they can all get a spot at the end if they meet the criteria they need to. It's not like a winner takes all approach, which is more typical of these shows, but they managed to do it well. The stakes and the conflict come from, you know, the dancers trying to keep up. There's some like more underdog dancers that have more trouble like picking up choreography or having the endurance, or they're psyching themselves out mentally. Everyone's like competing against themselves, and sometimes they win and sometimes they lose. And that's our conflict. Our conflict isn't drag queens throwing drinks at each other and Untucked. It's women trying to be better than they were the day before, or trying to prove themselves when they made a bunch of mistakes before. There's also like kind of the external conflict of like our society is fat phobic and oppressive in many ways to these people, and they are trying to fight those societal limitations that we have. So that's another layer of conflict that comes with this show. It's like society is kind of the enemy against Lizzo and her Big Grrrls. Let me get into my thoughts on season 1, the journeys of the different Big Grrrls. Episode 1, we had a sort of auditions moment and a dance battle because there were 13 girls and only 10 spots in the mansion. Each woman got a one-on-one 5-minute session with Lizzo where they got to know each other and meet, and also dance for Lizzo a bit. Then they do the dance battle where the group is split in two, and the groups also have to come up with some choreography themselves. So there's room for creativity and freestyling, and it seems like throughout the episodes there was always kind of a little room for freestyle moments. It's interesting how much this show reminded me of DCC Making the Team, which is a show I do like, as like toxic as it is, honestly. It's just like, I don't know, I can't help myself. I have to watch every dance reality show. Charm LaDonna, who was a choreographer on episode 1 of Watch Out for the Big Grrrls, has been on DCC Making the Team and guest choreographed. On that show, they often have several guest choreographers. A little parallel between the two shows, because I do feel like Watch Out for the Big Grrrls probably had a fair amount of inspiration when they were drafting up the format of it, just because DCC Making the Team is like the closest show trying to do what this show's doing. Ultimately, it was Kiana and Kimberly that did not make the team, which I was sad about. Every time there was a cut, I was so sad on this show because they were just so cool and sweet, and they were so passionate about this. And it also feels like this type of opportunity is rare nowadays. I mean, this show is trying to make steps forward so that it isn't so rare to have like plus size dancers. But at this point in time, this opportunity is like probably one of the biggest stages you can find as a plus size dancer. Only 2 girls were cut. You may be wondering, what about the third? There's only 10 spots, right? There was actually one girl who stood out so much in a good way that Lizzo gave her a fast pass to the end. Crystal from Houston, Texas, who was just killing it at every time she had a chance to dance. She checked off all the boxes for being a big girl, and Lizzo was like, you know what? You are going on tour with me, and I am deciding that now. Go to rehearsals with the rest of the dancers. The sad thing was, though, that, like, she doesn't get as much screen time to, like, gain fans from the show. So I think it was kind of a weird double-edged sword for Crystal, because I was excited to be like, okay, this is our front runner. I'm excited to see what she does every week. And then it was like, oh, she's gone. But I'm happy for her because she got, you know, the prize right away. So in episode 2, they move into the mansion. I'm sad Crystal can't move into the mansion. Now that they're in the mansion, Lizzo came in and introduced 2 of her current big girls to be sort of mentors throughout, and they come back a lot to help. In this episode, there's one girl that is specifically sticking out from the rest of the group, and that is Jasmine. Jasmine starts butting heads with a few of the girls when they're trying to just rehearse like on their own and stuff. She's just being a little bossy. And Jasmine in her confessionals doesn't really understand why. She's very like, I'm the best one here and all that. Right away I was like, okay, Jasmine is the diabetes of the season. Just kind of complaining about the other girls and what they're doing, and not realizing that like she just needs to focus on herself. I mean, it made for interesting drama on a show that's pretty drama free. Jasmine butting heads with some of them was kind of like the most little conflict that we got. So next is episode 3. In this episode they made music videos. The girls were split up into groups of 3 or maybe 4 and had to produce a music video in the mansion. I thought it was interesting they didn't do a Lizzo song for the music videos, but honestly it was cool because we got a lot of Lizzo music and choreography. It was nice that there were a couple moments where we just had other big popular songs too. They all had different themes, and one group did like partying by the pool, and that was Jasmine's group, and she was kind of butting heads with her group a lot, or being bossy, and that group ended up being kind of messy because they couldn't like come to a good consensus of what to do and ended up just doing something kind of basic, which was just like, we're partying by the pool. Another group got assigned the gym as their location, and they decided to make a music video about making the gym into a nightclub, which looked fun in the end but didn't have a great story, and the judges were like, there was no compelling story here. And then finally the music video that did win was a Barbie doll themed music video, but they were representing, you know, underrepresented type of dolls. Charity was on that group and was representing for bald women. Jayla was in that group, who was representing for trans women. And I can't remember who else was in that group. Maybe it was Ashley. I think Charity and Jayla were the ones that had the most commitment to this story because it meant a lot to them. So that group won. They got the Juice and the 100% That Bitch award. This episode also had a standout with Isabel, who was in the gym nightclub group. I liked Isabel. She was a fan of K-pop, and I liked that Isabel was always talking about how K-pop industry beauty standards are so limited and that phobic, because it's not something I hear about very often. Also in this episode, Jasmine had another faux pas. Aside from butting heads a bit with her group, Lizzo assigned her creative director to direct all of the music videos, so they got a lot of interaction with her, and Jasmine ended up flirting with her a little bit, just saying like, you're so fine and whatnot. You know, it was done in a very harmless way, but at the same time, once Lizzo heard about it, they were like, you know what, that's not okay, that just reads as unprofessional, and you shouldn't do that on a set ever. Which, like, yeah, I'm just like, just wait for the rap party. So episode 4 was one where the challenge was to do a nude photo shoot. This is one where Lizzo talked about her journey with body positivity and how she, you know, has highs and lows about it, and she was good at always giving these pep talks to the girls. Almost, I think every episode she had several. This was meant to be a challenge about being comfortable in your skin and not being afraid to show off and feeling sexy. This shoot was gonna be super tasteful. Like, it's not showing anything. It's like, you know, holding a cloth or posing strategically. It's not like this Playboy type moment. It's a very like artistic or feminine eye type of nudity. However, a couple of the girls had trouble with the nude shoot, and this was one of the moments where I was like, dang, we've come a long way since 2001 America's Next Top Model nude photo shoot on season 1. Isabel had an issue with the nude photo shoot because she is half Korean and wants to have a career teaching in South Korea potentially, and she expressed that to Lizzo when she introduced the challenge. Lizzo, surprise surprise, not really, said, girl, those are your boundaries and that's fine. We'll just do whatever you're comfortable with. It's just insane the difference from Tyra Banks chastising girls who refuse to pose nude in Paris on like tabletops in front of a crew and a bunch of onlookers, like a bunch of men.
If you would have done that photo shoot and showed that big gadunk can be beautiful and it can be sexy and I can stand right next to these other girls and serve and be fierce, I think that would have been a very strong platform.
A completely different experience and response. It was such a direct parallel to that first season of Top Model. If you don't know, there was a contestant named Robin who made it to the final four, and the challenge was to do a full-on nude photo shoot, like see everything kind of nude photo shoot. And she refused because she was a very fierce Christian. So there's no way her husband's just for her body and her body's just for her husband and all that.
My grandmother used to always tell me, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
And it became a big deal. And Robin went home for it because she refused. But yeah, there was no mercy or grace shown to those women. Now in this, Lizzo had the opportunity to change how reality TV goes and not exploiting contestants and making them uncomfortable. I think that respect is major for a reality TV show, and just kind of almost it's breaking new ground in that way. Like, I know this show, there's a lot of obvious reasons that it's breaking ground and pushing things forward and all that, but I think this is a subtle part of it that is kind of in the background of like Lizzo and production uplifting the women instead of exploiting them to make conflicts for a TV show. There was actually another girl that was uncomfortable posing nude as well. She didn't have like precise cultural reasons, but for her it was fine too. It was Ariana. It was funny because Ariana decided later on that she didn't want to pose nude after Isabel and all that, and Ariana was like, what if this hurts my status in the competition? Like, I just feel like Ariana watched Top Model and was a little traumatized by it, because she was like, I'm scared to not do it because they're gonna like cut me for that. I can bet anything it's like literally trauma from watching that Top Model season and what happened to Robin. In this episode, they also did this dance where they had to like write a word on a piece of glass and they kicked through it by the end. I mean, I assumed this wasn't real glass, but I was so terrified because all of them had this glass panel and they just like kicked it on stage and there were just glass shards everywhere. It looked so dangerous. I mean, there's no way that was real glass, obviously, because that would be, you know, safety violation. Some people really stood out in that dance. I think Ashley had her big moment in that dance. So next we had episode 5, and in this episode, Crystal came to visit. So Crystal, the first big girl to be accepted from this audition process, got to visit the girls in the house, catch up with them a little bit. I was happy to see her. At least we didn't get her living there, but we got her visiting a few times. This episode was also the makeover episode, which I was not expecting, but it's a classic part of these reality shows, and I love me a makeover episode. They all kind of got these glam persona makeovers, and they walked the runway, plus they also learned choreography for Truth Hurts. Yeah, for Truth Hurts. SZA was so funny as a guest judge. She was just living. She didn't notice any mistakes, even though a girl fully fell off the stage. SZA did not notice. Also, she like couldn't sit in the chair properly. She was literally like, and yeah, I felt so bad for J-Lo falling off the stage during this dance. She got right back up like a champ, but that's one of my biggest fears, seeing, you know, movement on this type of runway or stage situation. It's like falling fully off of it. It's terrifying. And at the end of this episode, we actually had a cut. This was the first cut in 5 episodes or 4 episodes or whatever since they moved into the mansion. Jasmine got eliminated because some of her issues started coming up again, that she had had conflicts with several of the girls, and she ended up spilling that to Lizzo at the final judging. Lizzo and the other guest judges ultimately made the call, and they were like, I'm sorry, you're just not ready. You just need to go on your own journey. And they were very kind about it. I do feel like that moment where she flirted with the creative director also didn't play in her favor, and this was probably the last strike for Lizzo. If that hadn't happened, I feel like she wouldn't have been cut here. I was sad to lose Jasmine because she was a big personality and a great dancer too. Lizzo really emphasized that she wanted harmony on the tour and she can't be worrying about, you know, people having interpersonal conflicts, and that's fair enough. So in episode 6, everyone shook up. This episode centered around the song Juice. They had to learn the Juice choreography on a very difficult stage with a bunch of steps and stairs and pyrotechnics and fans blowing their hair. I think it was Ariana's. It was someone was theorizing that they were gonna put them in really difficult outfits too, on top of putting all of these weird stage elements on them. I think it was Ariana again. I swear, I think she is a Top Model fan, and I haven't looked into it or anything, but I just get the vibe because she was the one always saying like, what if they do this? What if they cut me for that? And I'm just like, girl, I think you watch too much Top Model and are expecting that kind of treatment. That would be a Top Model thing to do, to like hoping they fall and oh my god, all that. So it was funny how Ariana seemed a little traumatized by Top Model. That's just my theory, but she was expecting the worst out of these challenges. Lizzo came in and had a heart-to-heart with the girls. It was very early Tyra in Top Model, where she would come into the house and talk to everybody, have like a group therapy session. Once they do the performance, they all do a pretty good job, to the point where everyone gets the Juice Award for that week. It was kind of confusing though, because everyone got the Juice Award, but then they dismissed some of the girls and kept 4 of them on stage, which felt very like, you stay after class because we need to talk kind of thing. So it was Isabel, Charity, Moesha, and Jayla that were asked to stay behind after the dance by Lizzo and her choreographer Tanisha. Tanisha was like the Simon Cowell character of this show. Like, this show was pretty wholesome and positive, but every reality show has to have their more hard-ass judge, and Tanisha was that person. She was concerned about those 4 girls and wanted to see them do the choreography again. Isabel, Charity, and Jayla were struggling throughout the whole show. They were concerns for the choreographers since the beginning, kind of the underdogs. Moesha, to me, came out of nowhere, that like they started being concerned about her, because she just seemed solid for most of the time. They really liked her makeover, that she showed versatility, which I was annoyed they made her like dim down her personal style to show versatility for that episode, but it was just for one episode, so you know, I'll let it go. I just really like her style, so I was like annoyed they were trying to make her change it. They had to do the choreography again. They had to do it 4 times. It was crazy. The other girls back at the mansion could hear that they were doing it, and one of them was like, it's giving lip sync for your life. I like that little RuPaul's Drag Race nod. I mean, Lizzo is part of the Drag Race family a bit, doing vocals early on in her career and now being a featured guest judge for season 14. So that episode is left off on a cliffhanger about which of the 4 girls is going home, if any of them. We assume at least one of them is, and episode 7 picks up on the cliffhanger. Isabel gets cut for her stamina problems, and Moesha gets cut because she's kind of in her head about a potential ankle injury and they just don't want to take the risk. I was devastated by this elimination. It felt so sudden to me. Even Isabel, I feel like at the very beginning she was struggling a bit, but she was doing great. She really started shining when she was in the nightclub gym music video thing, and it felt like she was fine up until now. And Moesha was my favorite. She was the one I related to the most. She had blue hair and she had a really eccentric personal style. There was this one look that she had in the confessionals where she had pink eyelashes, and I was just like, oh, she really inspired me. Plus, she's like kind of introverted, so I just related to her a lot, being someone that like likes to present very loud and colorful, but as a personality is more quiet. I was not the only one upset. The rest of the girls were shook. Once they all went back in to the mansion, all of the girls were crying and so sad. It was so sad because it looked like they had such a sisterhood, and I was just and I loved Isabel too. I really thought she had it. I thought Moesha had it in the bag. Honestly, Jayla and Charity had been struggling a lot more. I didn't want to see them go either, but I would have predicted them being the ones cut, unfortunately, in that round. And then from there, it's almost time for Bonnaroo, and they are going into the final rehearsal. However, the final rehearsal is going horribly. Tanisha is really upset that everyone's just not listening and messing up, and just disoriented and confused in general. And after this rehearsal, they finally give out badges. They frame them as badges, but it's like the pass if you're gonna make it to either the tour, which is the ultimate prize, or just Bonnaroo Festival, and then we'll see. Only 2 girls got a pass for the tour. I mean, makes sense. Everyone was doing pretty poorly in the rehearsals, and these 2 women are very consistent, and that was Ashley and Ariana. I really liked Ariana. She was really bubbly, and she kind of gave me little sister energy. I think she was on the younger side. That was something interesting too about the show. The age ranges were a lot more varied. It was people up from like around 22 to like being in their mid 30s, and it's just nice because a show like Top Model, it's exploiting women that are 18, 19, 20 years old that are so young. They're just exploiting their sort of naivety or their cluelessness about the world. It was nice to see representation on this show of different ages. It feels like fully formed adults that are going on a TV show, understanding what that means in general. So anyway, Ashley and Ariana make it through, and then Lizzo hands out the badges for Bonnaroo Festival, and she actually hands them out to everyone left. It's made to be very suspenseful, but they all end up having the opportunity to perform at Bonnaroo with Lizzo. Jayla is the last to be accepted, and Lizzo kind of gives her a fake out elimination, but ends up giving her the badge. However, this episode ends in another cliffhanger talking about Hurricane Ida. It didn't affect where I live, so I wasn't thinking about that. I actually don't even know where Bonnaroo takes place. Apparently it's in Tennessee. In episode 8, which is the finale, they're all preparing for Bonnaroo, and then Lizzo comes in to deliver the bad news. The festival has been canceled due to Hurricane Ida flooding the area. It's really sad, and Lizzo has a very vulnerable and honest moment here talking about how this is the state of the world now, and like she had one of her biggest, most exciting performances canceled due to COVID, and now this, and it's hard to be optimistic in the state of the world, and what does that say about our society and the planet that this is happening so much more now. I thought that was very interesting, and as usual on a positive and hopeful note, and says their job is to provide joy and entertainment and escapism from all of that. So they end up pivoting to Lizzo's next scheduled show, which is in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's just a Lizzo show. She was excited because apparently her career started out in Minneapolis. And then we see the show play out. We see some of the big songs, the big moments. We see the big girls go out and perform. Jayla gets a huge reaction from the crowd when she does her cool backflip trick. They kind of reflect on day 1 to now and the journey and all the typical finale stuff. But at the end, I wasn't expecting this. I thought all of their positions were secured after this performance because they all did so good. They had the outfits, they looked uniform with the other big girls. At the end, they have another judging type debrief. Ashley and Ariana are already set to go on tour, but Lizzo ends up inviting 3 more of the girls to go on tour. She invites Kiara, Asia, and Jayla to go on tour. And Jayla, it's kind of the final spot again, because she did have a lot of kind of ups and downs throughout the journey. Sydney and Charity got cut. I was surprised by Sydney because, again, this is kind of random, but she was doing really good the whole show except for at the very beginning, and then she fizzled out at the very end. She was having trouble in rehearsals. Charity had been having more issues. I was sad because I thought she had really stepped up and I thought she was good to go. I guess it is what it is. So that was the show. I thought it was so great. I was so excited. This show totally caught me off guard because I had heard that Lizzo had a TV show in the works, but I didn't understand that it was gonna be like this. It was gonna be something so cool. I usually expect celebrities, especially of this caliber where they're like mainstream celebrities, they look down upon reality TV. They think it's lowbrow and like not worth their time, and I don't know. I feel like they don't see that as like a potential project, but I think Lizzo was the perfect person to do a show like this. It fits her brand perfectly, and it feeds us that like that type of content. It was like Christmas morning when I found out this show was out and all of the episodes were out. I could binge them. I don't have to wait fucking week to week like every other stupid show I'm watching right now. It just had all of the elements we know and love from old reality TV mixed with a modern polish, an uplifting message, and not so exploitative. I'm sorry this is a long video, but I'm just really passionate about reality TV, and I want to talk a little bit about like the broader things that this show is doing. I've touched on it a lot throughout different parts of the video, but I just find it so interesting to examine this show compared to America's Next Top Model and just other shows of its nature. I think of America's Next Top Model because it was such a pop cultural phenomenon, and it was sort of the blueprint for the glamorous competition reality TV, I feel like. In the first episode of Watch Out for the Big Grrrls, Lizzo reminds me so much of Tyra when she's explaining the concept for Top Model in episode 1 of season 1. It's very similar. Both Tyra and Lizzo are trying to open doors in their industry. Season 1 of Top Model cast plus size women to be on the show at a time that it was extremely stigmatized in the fashion industry. And Tyra was specifically like, I want to show different kinds of beauty. I want to show uniqueness and personality. And it did have some of those like positive intentions, but it was victim to the times when reality TV was exploitative. I think it just reflects on the culture of the time of both of these shows. Back in the 2000s, it was like the Bush administration and neoliberal ideas were extremely prevalent, and reality TV was actually birthed out of wanting to avoid paying actors and writers in Hollywood and wanting to avoid unions in the entertainment industry, because unions are big in Hollywood. As much as unions have been kind of destroyed in the US in a lot of industries. I'm not an expert on union stuff and politics and all that, but about the unions I do hear about, they are either in Hollywood or in the teaching industry, education industry. So when there were writer strikes, I don't remember when, but it was when shows like Cops and shows about like true crime, they were a cheap way to produce TV where these studios and networks did not have to deal with the writers union or the actors union to still make entertainment that people are going to watch. The early reality TV shows, they were made to reflect these ideals that society had at the time of like super free capitalism and the whole winner takes all concept of early reality TV, and it's still to this day we still have that format, but the origins of it,
Winner takes all.
everyone competing on a reality TV show works extremely hard for one person to get paid at the end. So think of Survivor, where one wins $1 million and then the rest you don't pay them or anything. I think nowadays maybe there's a little more compensation for being on reality TV, or there's definitely compensation for being like second, third, and fourth place and things like that. Nowadays it's a little better, but in the origin times, it's similar to the idea of like paying someone with exposure. We're doing like a art contest that the winner wins the job. But it's like you just had a bunch of people work for free and promote your thing on social media using the hashtag or whatever, and you ultimately benefited from having this kind of messed up format where you don't compensate everyone for their work, you just compensate the best one. And that ideal is the origins of competitive reality TV. Fast forward to today, it's totally different. It's not about cutthroat capitalist competition, it's about uplifting and about representation and about giving a platform and spreading a message. All of these things that Watch Out for the Big Grrrls really drove home. Watch Out for the Big Grrrls wasn't approved by Amazon because it's a good message for women. It's got approved because it's something culturally as a society we approve of and we will watch and will support, because now our culture is more focused on supporting wholesomeness and positivity, this type of message that Lizzo is trying to embody. And I think that culture shift happened throughout the 2010s and now is pretty solidified. I didn't super research the exact timeline, but me as an American living in this country, I've seen that happen over the past few years. And I mean, it started, I think, in 2015 with the Black Lives Matter movement, that ultimately leading into the counterculture that came with the 2016 election of Trump. That, I feel like, kickstarted this counterculture movement where we are calling out things and we are calling out racism and sexism and homophobia in our society. It's like a big societal reckoning. After 2016 came Me Too in like 2017, 2018. The Me Too movement was swept up into that counterculture as well, where we were calling out anyone who had exploited their position of power over somebody else. And then ultimately 2020, we had the pandemic and all of these anti-racism protests and this whole reckoning. I just think the culture has evolved for a show like this to be successful and to even happen. I just find that so interesting how this show is so similar to 2001 Top Model, but our society at the time is reflected in how it plays out. Before, because values were on capitalism and cutthroat competition, that was reflected in the show. Drama between girls was the main conflict driving the action of Top Model early seasons. And now the conflict and the villain of Watch Out for the Big Grrrls, it's the society that hasn't moved on to this new way of thinking, the society that is fatphobic, racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, all of these things, ableist, you name it. That is the conflict that each person is facing on this show. It's the oppression of society that is the villain of the season. It's not Jasmine, who butted heads a couple times with the girls. It's like society is a villain and Lizzo is trying to fight it and trying to like recruit soldiers to fight with her and opening doors for more entertainers that look like her and can provide different intersections of these issues. Very interesting stuff. Does this make any sense? I do feel like Lizzo and this production, they made reality TV as ethically as possible. However, I do have to think about, and I always think about this about reality TV, because you can't praise reality TV without also acknowledging its ugly side. Even though Lizzo made this show like as ethically and morally like pristine as possible, like respecting girls' boundaries, not exploiting them, giving them pep talks at every turn, Lizzo still really benefits from making this type of show. Like, this show is a great thing on Lizzo's resume. It builds up her brand, it promotes her songs, her music, her lyrics, it promotes her tour and her performances. Even though Lizzo is providing this big benefit for the women, she is benefiting herself too. She is putting herself as this like figurehead of the show that is someone to aspire to. And it's just interesting because it's like with so many of these shows, like America's Next Top Model with Tyra Banks or RuPaul's Drag Race and RuPaul, it's like someone that starts out with the intention of making a platform and their craft be more, or make society more open-minded. At what point does that host become the villain for, like, almost like playing God in a sense? I don't know. I don't think this really applies to Lizzo's show because Lizzo's show is like trying to achieve a very specific goal. It's not an arbitrary title of America's Next Top Model or America's Next Drag Superstar, which are like titles made just from the TV show. Lizzo's show is about them getting this job on Lizzo's tour. I don't think this is the type of a show where they can just pop out 2 seasons a year like a lot of other shows. The show has to like align with Lizzo's career. Like Lizzo has to have a tour coming up or a big show coming up to make this show a thing, you know what I mean? I don't think this is the type of show or the type of thing Lizzo's gonna be trying to do every single year or try to expand too much on. We'll see. I mean, I'd be happy to. I love the show. It's kind of a weird thing that I think about with reality TV. It's like You can make it as ethical as possible, but in essence, is reality TV ever ethical? 100%. I don't think it is, but I do believe Lizzo got it as literally as close as she could to being ethical, and I appreciate her for that. I know I got deep there, but I love reality TV and I love overanalyzing it. I would love to hear what you thought of Watch Out for the Big Grrrls. If you watched, plan to watch, what do you think of reality TV in general? If you have thoughts about that too, I would love to hear about it. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed. I put out new videos twice a week about TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things. And you can follow me at Miscellaneous on Instagram or Twitter to find out about new videos, or just turn on the bell notification here on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!